The first time my credit card was declined, I assumed the pharmacy's machine was broken. I was standing beneath a row of bright white lights with a bottle of blood pressure medicine on the counter and 3 people waiting behind me. The cashier, a young woman with purple glasses, tried the card again. The machine, beep, declined. She looked embarrassed for me. "Do you have another card, Mr. Wright?" I did. I gave her the blue one I used for groceries and household expenses. That card was declined too. By then, the man behind me had started checking his watch. I could feel him wondering why an old man had come to the pharmacy without enough money to pay for a $38 prescription. I opened my wallet and handed the cashier some cash. "It must be a bank error," I said. She smiled politely. "Probably." But as I walked back to my car, I knew it was not a normal error. I had spent 35 years as a court reporter in Denver. My job had been to listen carefully while people spoke under oath. I recorded every word, every pause, and every correction. After enough years, I learned that trouble usually announced itself before it entered the room. A witness would answer too quickly. A lawyer would avoid a simple question. A husband would say, "Honestly," before telling the least honest part of his story. Banks had their own warning signs. One declined card could be a technical mistake. 2 cards from different accounts being declined within seconds was a decision. I sat in my old sedan outside the pharmacy and called the number on the back of the first card. After several automated questions, a woman answered. "Thank you for calling Mountain Western Bank. My name is Denise. How may I help you?" "My name is Lawrence Wright. Both of my cards were just declined. I'd like to know why." She asked me to confirm my identity. I gave her my date of birth, the last 4 digits of my social security, and the answer to a security question. Sarah and I had chosen years ago. The woman typed for several seconds. Then she became quiet. "Mr. Wright, both cards have been temporarily restricted." "By whom?" "I'm reviewing the notes." I waited. The longer she remained silent, the more certain I became that the answer was not going to be simple. "Finally," she said, "there is a financial safety report attached to your profile." "What kind of report?" "It states that you may be experiencing memory problems and could be at risk of financial exploitation." I looked through the windshield at people entering and leaving the pharmacy. "Who filed it?" "I'm not authorized to give you the full name over the phone." "Was it my son?" Another pause. "I can tell you the report came from a person listed as a trusted family contact." "My son, Thomas?" "Was the only person listed that way." "Did he request that my cards be frozen?" "The request was made as a protective measure while the bank reviews your ability to manage the accounts." "My ability?" "I'm sorry, Mr. Wright. I'm reading the information in the system." "What evidence did he provide?" "I don't have access to all of the documents. The notes mention recent confusion, unusual spending, and concerns about your judgment." I almost laughed. I had not made any unusual purchases. My largest expense that month had been replacing a leaking pipe beneath the kitchen sink. "Can you restore the cards?" "Not from this department. You'll need to speak with a branch manager and possibly provide identification and medical confirmation." "Medical confirmation that I'm allowed to spend my own money?" I understand that this is frustrating. People often said they understood when they wanted you to stop asking questions. I thanked her, ended the call, and placed the phone on the passenger seat. Then I sat there for several minutes. I was not angry yet. Anger comes quickly. Understanding takes longer. I wanted to know exactly what Thomas had done, why he had done it, and how much he believed he controlled. My phone rang before I started the car. Thomas. I watched his name appear on the screen. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail, then I answered. "Hello, Dad, where are you?" "At the pharmacy." "Did you try to use your cards?" There was no surprise in his voice, only impatience. "Yes." He released a slow breath, like a parent speaking to a difficult child. "I was going to call you tonight. That would have been helpful before I tried to buy my medicine." You had cash, didn't you? That isn't the point. The point is that I had to take action. I started the engine, but did not drive away. What action? I asked the bank to freeze the cards temporarily. Why? Because you're not managing things properly. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I saw gray hair lines around my eyes, and the face of a man who had buried his wife 4 years earlier. I did not see a man who needed permission to buy medicine. What am I managing improperly? You paid the same electric bill twice last month. No, I didn't. The account showed two payments. One was the regular bill. The other was the deposit for the new meter they installed. Thomas hesitated. Then he moved to his next example. You also withdrew $5,000 in cash. I gave it to a contractor. What contractor? The man who repaired the back steps. You paid someone $5,000 in cash? He gave me a discount for immediate payment. I received an invoice and a signed receipt. That sounds suspicious. It sounds suspicious because you did not ask me before reporting me to the bank. Thomas's voice became harder. Dad, this is exactly what I mean. You get defensive whenever anyone tries to help. Freezing my cards is not help. You're 67. I know my age. You live alone. You still keep important papers in filing cabinets. You refuse to use the financial apps I installed. And after what happened to Arthur, you should understand how easily older people can be manipulated. That was the part that hurt. Only a few months earlier, I had helped my friend Arthur Bennett escape an attempt by his son-in-law to take control of his house. Thomas knew enough about the case to understand what Arthur had suffered. Now he was using the same language against me: protection, safety, concern. The soft words people used when they wanted control without admitting it. Did you file a report saying I had memory problems? I asked. I told them I was worried. Did you say I was making unusual purchases? I gave them examples. Did you tell them you had spoken with me first? Thomas did not answer. I had learned in court that silence was often the clearest answer. How many of my accounts did you ask them to restrict? I asked. All the ones I could see. That sentence gave me more information than he realized. Thomas could see only 3 small accounts. My household checking account, 1 savings account, and the 2 credit cards connected to them. He did not know about the rest. Sarah and I had made that decision years earlier. We loved our children, but we had both worked around enough family disputes to understand that inheritance could change people long before anyone died. Thomas believed he had frozen my entire financial life. In reality, he had locked the front drawer of a desk while the filing room remained open behind him. I kept my voice calm. Come by tonight. Good. We need to talk about next steps. I agree. I'll bring Natalie. I had expected that. 7 o'clock, I said. After the call ended, I drove home to Fairfax Street. The house looked exactly as it had when I left that morning. The same red brick, the same narrow front steps. The same maple tree Sarah had planted when Rachel was born. Thomas had been telling me for 2 years that the house was too large for one person. It had 3 bedrooms. One was mine. One had become a guest room. The third was Sarah's sewing room, which I had not changed since her death. It was not too much house. It was simply a house. Thomas wanted me to sell. I entered through the front door, placed my medicine on the kitchen counter, and went into my office. The room smelled of paper, old wood, and the faint coffee stain that had never fully left the carpet beside my desk. Sarah used to call the office my private courthouse. Every document had a place. Every receipt had a date. Every important conversation had a written note. People thought paper records were old-fashioned. They were not always convenient, but they had one great advantage. No one could change them from another room. I opened the locked lower drawer and took out a blue folder. Inside was a copy of the limited financial authorization I had signed 2 years earlier. I had given Thomas access to view my household account after I underwent minor surgery. The document allowed him to pay routine bills if I was temporarily unable to do so. It did not allow him to freeze my cards. It did not allow him to transfer money, and it certainly did not allow him to declare me incapable of making my own decisions. I read every line again. Then I called Patricia Chen. Patricia had helped Arthur create a trust that protected his home. She was patient, careful, and almost impossible to surprise. "Almost Lawrence," she said when she answered. "Are you calling with a legal question, or because you have discovered another criminal hiding inside a family, possibly both?" "What happened?" "My son froze my credit cards and reported that I may be unable to manage my finances." She became quiet. "Did you authorize that?" "No." "Does he have a power of attorney?" "Only a limited authorization to view one checking account and pay household bills during a medical emergency." "Send it to me." "I will." "Did the bank tell you what documents he submitted?" "Not yet." "Do not sign anything Thomas brings tonight." "You assumed he was coming." People rarely take control in one step. First, they create a problem. Then they arrive with a solution. I looked at Sarah's photograph on my desk. Can the bank legally freeze the cards? Temporarily, yes, if they believe a vulnerable customer may be at risk. But the person making the report can face serious consequences if he knowingly provided false information. I don't want to destroy my son. I did not ask what you wanted to do to Thomas. I asked what he did to you. That was Patricia's way. She separated emotion from evidence before allowing them back into the same room. "I need to know what he is trying to gain," I said. "Then let him talk." "I plan to. Record the meeting if you can legally do so. Colorado allows one-party consent. I know that you know. I'm reminding you not to become so focused on his words that you forget to preserve them." After our call, I placed a small recorder inside a wooden box on the bookshelf. It was the same type of offline device I had used during Arthur's case. No internet connection, no wireless signal. Just memory, a microphone, and a red light I covered with black tape. At 7 o'clock, Thomas and Natalie arrived. Thomas was 41, tall and broad-shouldered, with the same dark hair I had at his age. He wore a gray suit without a tie and carried a leather folder beneath one arm. Natalie entered behind him wearing a cream coat, and the expression she used when entering a restaurant, that had failed to prepare her table on time. My daughter-in-law was not cruel in obvious ways. She remembered birthdays. She sent Christmas cards. She always asked whether I needed anything from the store. But every kind question had a direction. Did I still need the house? Was I using all my savings wisely? Wouldn't I be happier somewhere with staff? Had I considered giving the children their inheritance early, when they could actually use it? Natalie kissed my cheek. "You look tired, Lawrence." "I spent the afternoon learning that I cannot be trusted with a credit card." Her smile tightened. "We're worried about you." Thomas placed the folder on the dining table. "Can we sit?" I poured coffee for myself. They declined. That told me they had not come for a conversation. They had come for a result. We sat at the same dining table where Sarah had once served Sunday meals. Thomas opened the folder. "I brought a plan." "Before we discuss your plan," I said, "I want you to explain exactly what you told the bank." He looked at Natalie. She gave him a small nod. "I told them about the duplicate payment, the cash withdrawal, and your recent behavior." "What recent behavior? You've become secretive." "Private and secretive are not the same thing." "You won't show me your investment records. You are not my accountant." "You refuse to discuss the value of the house." "I know the value of the house. You don't use the budgeting application I set up." "I used it for 3 days. It sold my spending information to advertisers." "That isn't the point. It was the reason I removed it." Natalie leaned forward. "No one is saying you're completely incapable. Lawrence, we're saying things are changing." "What things?" "You forget conversations." "Which conversation?" She hesitated. "The one about Christmas." "What part?" We told you we were spending Christmas with my parents. Yes, you told me on November 17th at approximately 6:30 in the evening. We were standing in my kitchen. Thomas was eating the last piece of apple pie, and you said your mother had already purchased plane tickets. Natalie looked at Thomas. I continued. You later changed the plan because Owen wanted to stay in Denver. That was on December 2nd. Thomas leaned back. This isn't a memory test. No, you reported that I was losing my memory. I believe the subject is relevant. His face hardened. Dad, we are trying to prevent a crisis before it happens. You created the crisis. I froze 2 cards. You also made a false statement about my mental condition. I shared concerns. You stated that I was making unusual financial decisions. You are. Which decision benefits you? Thomas stared at me. Natalie answered. This is exactly why we need an independent system. She opened the folder and removed a document. We had this prepared.
By whom?
A lawyer we know. Patricia would later tell me that the phrase, a lawyer we know, had caused more family disasters than many actual crimes. Thomas slid the document across the table. At the top were the words, durable financial power of attorney and asset management authorization. I'm not signing this, I said. You haven't read it, Thomas replied. I read the title. It only allows me to help manage things. It allows you to control bank accounts, investments, real estate, insurance policies, tax filings, and business interests. His eyes narrowed. You read that quickly. I spent 35 years following spoken testimony at more than 200 words per minute. I can read a 4-page power of attorney. Natalie folded her arms. You don't have to be difficult. Refusing to hand over my financial life is not being difficult. You're proving our point, Thomas said. What point? That you react emotionally whenever we raise reasonable concerns. I looked at him. He was using courtroom language now. Equate the behavior, then use the reaction as evidence. I had seen lawyers do it to witnesses. I had seen husbands do it to wives. And now I was watching my own son do it to me. What happens if I sign? I asked. Thomas's tone softened because he thought I was moving toward agreement. The cards are restored. I take over bill payments. I manage investments with a professional advisor. We look at selling this house and moving you somewhere safer. Where? There's a senior community near Rachel's hospital. I'm not moving. You haven't seen it. I don't need to see a place I do not intend to live. Natalie spoke carefully. This house could sell for nearly $900,000. It could. That money could be invested better. By whom? By Thomas and the advisor. What is the advisor's name? Thomas shifted in his chair. Mark Ellison. What firm? He works independently. Does Mark know you want control over my assets? He understands the situation. Does he know you filed a report claiming I was mentally impaired? Thomas closed the folder. You're turning this into an interrogation. No, in an interrogation, I would already know the answers. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then Natalie changed direction. Think about Owen. That was expected too. What about him? College will be expensive. Thomas and I are trying to plan for the family's future with my money. With the money that will eventually belong to your children. The room became very still. Thomas looked at her sharply. Natalie realized she had spoken too plainly. I had heard many people reveal the truth by accident. It often happened when patience ended. They had already begun treating my property as an inheritance. I was simply the living condition attached to it. I see, I said. That isn't what she meant, Thomas replied. It is exactly what she meant. Natalie stood. You know what? We came here to help, and you are insulting us. I looked up at her. You froze my cards, described me as mentally incapable, and brought documents giving your husband control of my home. I have not insulted anyone. Thomas gathered the papers. We'll give you time to calm down. I am calm. We'll talk again this weekend. Bring every document you submitted to the bank. Why? Because I want to review the statements made about me. I don't have to provide private communication. Communication about my finances and mental health is not private from me. He stood. At the front door, he turned around. Dad, if you keep fighting us, the bank may decide. You need a court-appointed guardian. The threat was quiet. That made it worse. I looked at my son and remembered teaching him to ride a bicycle on the sidewalk outside the house. He had been 7. He had fallen twice, scraped his knee, and refused to try again. Sarah had knelt beside him and said, "Your father will not let go until you are ready." I had held the back of the seat for another hour. Now that same boy was standing in my hallway, warning that he might ask a court to take away my right to make decisions. "Good night, Thomas," I said. After they left, I returned to the dining room and stopped the recorder. Then I sat alone at the table. There are moments when the truth gives you strength. There are other moments when it simply hurts. I had helped Arthur because his son-in-law was a criminal. That had been clear. This was different. Thomas was my son. He was not standing in my house with a weapon. He was not shouting. He believed, or wanted to believe, that his actions could be described as protection. Greed rarely introduces itself as greed. It arrives dressed as responsibility. I called Rachel. She answered on the 4th ring. "Dad, did you know? Thomas froze my cards?" Silence. That was enough. "How long have you known?" "He called me yesterday. And?" "He said there had been unusual activity." "Did he tell you he reported that I might be losing the ability to manage money?" "He said he had concerns." "Do you share them?" Rachel sighed. "Dad, I don't know." That answer hurt more than Thomas's threat. Rachel worked in hospital administration. She dealt with older patients, medical consent, and family disputes. She knew how damaging a false concern could become once it entered an official record. "What have I done that makes you think I'm incapable?" "You haven't done anything specific." "Then why don't you know?" "Because Thomas says you've been secretive since Mom died. Your mother and I were private before she died. You also refused to let us help with the estate. There was nothing for you to manage. You never explained that. It was not your responsibility." Rachel's voice became tired. "This is what he means. You shut everyone out." I looked at Sarah's empty chair across the room. "Thomas brought me a power of attorney tonight." "What?" "He wants control of my accounts, investments, and house. He didn't tell me that. He also mentioned a guardianship." Rachel became quiet. "Did he actually say that?" "He said the bank might decide. I needed a court-appointed guardian if I continued fighting." "That doesn't sound like him." It sounded exactly like him. Maybe he was frustrated. Frustration does not invent legal threats. It reveals them. Rachel breathed out slowly. "What are you going to do?" "Find out what he has already done." "Dad, please don't turn this into a war." "I did not freeze anyone's money." "I know." "No, Rachel. At this moment, you do not know. You are trying to remain neutral between a person whose rights were taken and the person who took them. That isn't fair. Neutrality often feels fair to the person who is not being harmed." I regretted the sentence immediately, but I did not take it back. Rachel said she would call me the next day. She did not. The next morning, I met Patricia at her office. She listened to the recording twice. When Thomas mentioned guardianship, she paused it. "That was not casual," she said. "I agree." "Do you know Mark Ellison?" "No." "I'll check whether he is licensed, and whether he has any business relationship with Thomas." I handed her the limited authorization. She read it. "This gives Thomas no power to freeze anything. It allows him to view the household account and submit routine payments, if you are hospitalized or otherwise unavailable." I was neither. Then he either misrepresented this document, submitted something else, or persuaded the bank to act through its vulnerable customer policy. "What do you recommend?" "First, a formal capacity evaluation by an independent physician. Not because I doubt you, but because we need objective evidence before Thomas creates a larger record. I'll do it. Second, Revoke this authorization immediately. Agreed. Third, update Sarah's trust. The trust held the house, most of my investment assets, and a small commercial property Sarah had inherited from her father. Thomas did not know the details. Both children knew a trust existed, but Sarah and I had never discussed its full structure with them. At the time of her death, I had become the acting trustee. Thomas and Rachel were equal beneficiaries after my death, subject to certain conditions. Thomas was listed as the first successor trustee. That now seemed dangerous. I want him removed as successor trustee, I said. Patricia looked at me. That is a major decision. So was freezing my accounts. Do you want him removed as a beneficiary? I looked out her office window at the traffic below. No. Why not? Because he is still my son. That is an emotional answer. You asked an emotional question. She almost smiled. Fair enough. I will not reward what he is doing. But I'm not ready to erase him from Sarah's plans. We can remove his authority without removing his future interest. Do it. Who replaces him? Rachel, if she agrees after seeing the evidence. And if she doesn't, an independent trustee. Patricia made a note. Anything else? Yes. Thomas has a business loan I guaranteed 3 years ago. Her pen stopped. How large? $480,000. Does he still owe it? About 310. Does he know the guarantee expires in 6 months? I doubt it. Are you planning not to renew it? I am planning to understand why he suddenly needs control of my assets. Patricia studied me. You already suspect the answer. I suspect debt. Then Gerald should confirm it. Gerald Hoffman met me later that afternoon at our usual coffee shop. He had retired from the Denver Police Department years earlier but still looked like a detective. He watched doors, remembered license plates, and never sat with his back to a window. I told him what had happened. He did not interrupt. When I finished, he said, "Do you want me to investigate your son?" "I want you to investigate his finances using legal sources." "That is still your son, I'm aware. Are you sure?" "No," he nodded. "That is more honest than most clients." Gerald checked public records, company filings, property liens, and court documents. 2 days later, he came to my house with a thin folder. Thomas's development company is in trouble. How much? Hard to know exactly. But one project in Aurora is 6 months behind schedule. 2 subcontractors filed liens. A lender sent a notice of default last month. What about his personal finances? His house has a second mortgage. Natalie's car lease is 2 months late, and there's a pending lawsuit from a former business partner. I sat across from Gerald in my office. Why didn't he ask me for help? Maybe because he already did. What do you mean? Gerald slid a copy of a property record toward me. Thomas had attempted to list my Fairfax Street house as supporting collateral in a private loan application. The application had not been approved because the title search showed that the house belonged to the Sarah Wright Family Trust, not to me personally. Thomas could not use it, not without my signature as trustee. The power of attorney he brought to dinner would have allowed him to act in my name. But even that might not have been enough to control the trust. He probably did not understand the difference. He needs the house, I said. He needs something, Gerald replied. And he needs it soon. That evening, Owen called me from his tablet. My grandson was 11, with Thomas's dark hair and Sarah's habit of looking directly at people when he asked a question. "Grandpa, are you mad at Dad? Why do you ask?" "Mom said you're being stubborn. What do you think?" "I think Dad is nervous." "About what?" "He keeps having phone calls in the garage." Children often notice the details adults believed they had hidden. "Did he say anything to you?" "No. But last night, Mom told him they needed your signature before Monday." I kept my voice steady. "Were they talking to you?" "No. I was on the stairs." "What else did you hear?" "Mom," said Aunt Rachel, "might ruin everything if she found out." "Did they say what I was supposed to sign?" "No." He looked worried. Am I in trouble for telling you? No, Owen. Dad says family problems should stay inside the family. They should, unless someone inside the family is being hurt. Are you being hurt? I looked at the boy on the screen. Not in a way you need to fix. He nodded, though he did not look convinced. Grandpa? Yes. Are you really forgetting things? No. I didn't think so. Why, you remembered the name of my science teacher. Dad forgot it 3 times. After the call, I contacted Rachel again. This time, I asked her to meet me in person. She arrived the following morning, wearing hospital clothes, beneath a long coat. She looked tired and suspicious. I have 20 minutes. You may need more. I played the recording from the dining room. She listened without speaking. When Thomas mentioned guardianship, her face changed. When Natalie referred to my money as the family's future inheritance, Rachel looked away. Then I showed her Gerald's folder. She read the property document twice. He tried to use your house as collateral. He tried to use the trust's house. Does he know the difference? He will. Rachel sat back. Why didn't he tell me about the business? Perhaps because you would have asked questions. He told me you were making irrational withdrawals. I paid a contractor. He said you gave money to a stranger. He was not a stranger. He said you forgot Christmas. I remembered both versions of the plan. Rachel pressed her fingers to her forehead. I should have called you. Yes, I thought Thomas was overreacting. But I also thought maybe there were things I hadn't seen. That was reasonable at first, and after he froze the cards? That was when reasonable concern ended. She looked at Sarah's photograph. Mom would hate this. Your mother prepared for it. Rachel turned toward me. What does that mean? I explained the trust. The house, the investments, the commercial property. The conditions Sarah and I had included. Rachel listened with growing surprise. How much is in it? Enough that Thomas's financial problem would not be solved by one house. You never told us. Because the money was not yours yet. That sounds harsh. It was meant to prevent exactly this. She stood and walked to the window. After a moment, she asked, What are you going to do to him? I'm going to let him explain himself. And if he lies, then he will explain himself in front of people who already know the truth. The plan came together on Friday. The branch manager, Emily Carter, agreed to a private meeting at Mountain Western Bank on Monday morning. Emily had known Sarah and me for more than 20 years. She was furious that the restrictions had been placed without speaking directly to me. But she also explained that Thomas had provided documents that appeared serious. One was a written statement describing incidents of confusion. One was a copy of the limited authorization. The third was an email that appeared to come from Rachel's hospital account, stating that I had shown signs consistent with cognitive decline. Rachel had never sent it. Someone had created an email address that looked similar to hers, changing one letter in the hospital's domain name. That transformed the situation. Thomas had not merely expressed concern. Someone had built evidence. Emily restored my cards after I provided identification, the physician's capacity report, and Patricia's formal revocation of Thomas's access. But we did not notify Thomas. As far as he knew, the restrictions remained. On Sunday evening, he called. Have you thought about the documents? I have. We need to finish this tomorrow. Why tomorrow? The bank review is moving forward. If you cooperate, we can prevent it from becoming more serious. Another lie. The bank review had already ended. Meet me at the main branch at 10, I said, with the signed power of attorney. Bring your copy. He sounded relieved. I knew you would understand. I understand more than I did last week. He did not hear the warning. At 9:50 the next morning, I arrived at the bank. Patricia was already in the conference room. Emily sat at the head of the table. Rachel stood near the window. Gerald waited outside. His presence was not legally necessary, but I wanted someone I trusted nearby if Thomas became aggressive. On the table were 5 folders. One contained the bank records. One contained the false email. One contained the physician's evaluation. One contained the trust amendment removing Thomas as successor trustee. The final folder contained the expiration notice for my guarantee of his business loan. At 10, Thomas and Natalie entered the branch. Through the glass wall, I watched them approach the reception desk. Thomas carried the same leather folder. Natalie wore a dark blue dress and a confident smile. They believed they had won. Emily met them in the lobby and brought them into the conference room. When Thomas saw Rachel, his steps slowed. "What are you doing here?" Rachel answered quietly, listening. Natalie looked at Patricia. "Why is there a lawyer?" Patricia closed the door. Emily turned the lock. The sound was soft, but everyone heard it. Thomas looked at me. "Dad, what is this?" "A meeting about my financial safety. You said you were signing. I said to bring your copy." His eyes moved across the table. Emily began. "Mr. Wright, before we discuss any documents, the bank needs clarification regarding the report you submitted about your father." "I already provided everything." "You provided a limited account authorization and represented it as broader financial authority." "I was acting as his trusted contact." "A trusted contact may report concerns. A trusted contact may not falsely claim legal authority." "I never claimed legal authority." Emily opened the first folder. "Your written request states, as his authorized financial representative, I am directing the bank to suspend all card access." Thomas looked at Natalie, then he looked back at Emily. "That was based on my understanding," Patricia spoke. "Your understanding is not consistent with the document." Thomas's face tightened. "This is a family matter." "No," Emily said. "It became a banking matter when you asked us to restrict a customer's accounts." Rachel placed the printed email on the table, and it became my matter when someone pretended to be me. Thomas looked down. "What is that? You know what it is," Rachel said. "No, I don't." "This email claims," I observed. "Dad showing signs of cognitive decline. Maybe someone at the hospital sent it. It uses my name." "Then ask your staff." "I did. The address is fake." Natalie spoke quickly. "Thomas, I told you that email was a bad idea." The room went silent. Thomas turned toward her. She covered her mouth as if she could pull the sentence back. I had seen that happen in court. A witness tries so hard to avoid one truth that she confirms a larger one. Rachel stared at Natalie. "You wrote it?" Natalie's face became pale. "I was trying to help by pretending to be me." "We needed the bank to take the concerns seriously." Thomas stood. "We're leaving." The locked door stopped him. Emily remained calm. "You are free to leave after I unlock the door. But first, you should understand that the bank's fraud department has been notified." "Fraud?" Thomas said. "No money was stolen. Fraud does not require a successful theft." He turned to me. "You did this?" "No. You did. I was protecting you." I opened Gerald's folder and placed the loan application in front of him. "From what?" Thomas looked at the page. His expression changed. "Where did you get this?" "It is part of a public filing connected to your lender." Natalie closed her eyes. Rachel picked up the document. "You tried to use Dad's house as collateral. It was temporary. You don't own the house," I said. I was going to explain. "You told a lender you expected to receive authority over it." I needed time. "How much?" He sat down slowly. 300,000. For the Aurora project?" "Yes." "What happened?" The contractor walked away. The lender froze the next payment. "If I don't cover the gap, the whole development fails." "And you lose the company." He nodded. For the first time since this began, he stopped sounding like a man in control. He sounded like my son, tired, afraid, ashamed. "Why didn't you ask me?" I said. "Because you would have said no." "Then you knew I did not agree." "I knew you wouldn't understand." "I understand debt." "You don't understand what it's like to build something now." The costs changed. The city delayed permits. Investors panicked. Everyone expected me to fix it. So you decided I would fix it without being told. I was going to pay everything back. With what? When the project sold. And if it didn't, he did not answer. I looked at Natalie. Was this your plan? We were trying to save our home. By taking control of mine? She looked down. Thomas suddenly leaned toward me. You have millions sitting in a trust. Rachel looked at him. How do you know that? Thomas realized his mistake. I had never told him the value. Mark estimated it, he said. Mark Ellison? Patricia asked. The unlicensed investment advisor. He is a consultant. He lost his securities registration 4 years ago after complaints about unauthorized trades. Thomas looked surprised. Patricia continued. He was also promised a percentage of any assets transferred under your proposed power of attorney. I had not known that part. Thomas looked toward Natalie. She looked away. Something inside him seemed to collapse. Dad, I can fix this. That is what you said about my accounts. I made mistakes. You created a false medical statement. Natalie did that. You submitted it. He looked at his wife. She stared back at him with disbelief. You said it was necessary, she whispered. Thomas said nothing. That was the moment I understood. Their marriage had already begun to break beneath the weight of the secret. But I felt no satisfaction, only sadness. I opened the folder containing the trust amendment. Sarah and I created the family trust 12 years ago. Thomas looked at the document. The Fairfax house belongs to the trust. So do most of the investments you hope to control. I know that now. No. You know the house is in a trust. You do not know how the trust works. I slid the amendment toward him. You were listed as successor trustee. As of Friday, you are no longer in that role. His head lifted. What? You will have no authority to manage the trust if I become ill or die. You can't do that, Patricia answered. He already did. Thomas looked at Rachel. You helped him? I agreed to serve with an independent co-trustee. You chose her over me? I held his gaze. I chose someone who did not forge evidence to take control of my property. His face turned red. Are you removing me from the inheritance too? No. That surprised everyone except Patricia. Thomas stared at me. Why not? Because your mother loved you, and you don't? The question struck harder than he intended, or perhaps exactly as hard as he intended. I love you enough to stop you, I said. He looked away. I opened the last folder. 3 years ago, I guaranteed your business loan. I know. The guarantee expires in 6 months. His eyes returned to mine. I will not renew it. He stood again. If you do that, the bank can demand new security. Yes. I could lose the company. Yes. My employees could lose their jobs. That is why Patricia has prepared another option. She placed a document on the table. It was not a rescue. It was a controlled loan from an independent trust company, enough to complete or safely close the Aurora project. The money would not go to Thomas directly. Every payment would be supervised. Mark Ellison would have no involvement. Thomas would submit full financial records, sell the luxury car, and place his own home equity behind the debt before receiving help from the trust. He would also admit in writing that he had no authority over my finances and withdraw every false claim about my mental condition. Natalie would provide a statement regarding the fake email. Family counseling was required if they wanted any relationship with me outside legal meetings. Thomas read the terms. This is humiliating. So was standing in a pharmacy with 2 frozen cards while strangers waited behind me. You're making me beg. No, I am making you choose. Between what? Responsibility and collapse. He pushed the document away. You planned all this. I prepared for it. You wanted me trapped in this room. I wanted you in a room where facts mattered more than pressure. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Thomas looked at Rachel. Did you know about the loan offer? Yes, and you agreed? I agreed that Dad should not pay your debts without protection. He laughed bitterly. You always were his favorite. Rachel's eyes filled with anger. This has nothing to do with being the favorite. You used my name to make our father look mentally ill. Natalie sent the email. You gave it to the bank. Again, Thomas had no answer. Emily unlocked the door. You are free to leave, she said. The bank's review will continue, regardless of whether you accept Mr. Wright's proposal. Thomas gathered his papers. Natalie remained seated. Aren't you coming? He asked. She looked at him. You told me the house would be ours to manage. I thought it would. You said your father had already agreed. I said he would agree. You said no one would investigate the email. Not here. Natalie stood, but she did not follow him immediately. She looked at me. I'm sorry. Her voice was quiet. I could not tell whether she was sorry for what she had done or sorry that it had failed. Perhaps she did not know either. They left separately, through the glass wall. I watched Thomas cross the lobby and walk out onto the street. For 1 second, I wanted to follow him. I wanted to tell him the meeting was over, that he was still my boy, and that I would fix everything as I had fixed. Scraped knees, broken bicycles, and college applications. Then I remembered the pharmacy, the false email, the guardianship threat, the power of attorney. Love is not measured only by what we are willing to give. Sometimes it is measured by what we refuse to allow. Thomas accepted the supervised loan 4 days later. He did not call me. His lawyer contacted Patricia. The fraud investigation did not lead to criminal charges, partly because no money had been transferred, and partly because I chose not to push for prosecution. The bank permanently removed Thomas as my trusted contact and placed additional security around every account. Natalie provided a written statement admitting she created the false email. Rachel's hospital chose not to pursue the matter after confirming no internal system had been accessed. Thomas sold his car. He put his own house behind the business debt. Mark Ellison disappeared from the project the moment he realized he would not control any money. The Aurora development was eventually completed, though at a smaller profit than Thomas had promised his investors. He saved the company, but he could no longer pretend the success belonged only to him. For almost 2 months, Thomas and I did not speak. Owen still called me. Rachel visited every Sunday. She never asked me to forgive her for doubting me. Instead, she began helping with small things without trying to take control. She drove me to a medical appointment once, then handed me the paperwork and waited for me to decide whether I wanted her in the room. That simple act meant more than an apology. One afternoon, Arthur came over for chess. We sat on the back porch beneath the maple tree. He studied the board while I told him what had happened. When I finished, he moved a pawn. You saved his company. I protected the employees. Arthur smiled. That is what you tell yourself. It is partly true. You also saved your son, under conditions. Still saved. I moved my knight. Was that a mistake? Arthur considered the board. Ask me in 10 years. That is not helpful. It is honest. We played in silence for a while. Then Arthur said, when Evan tried to take my house, I wanted him punished. After he was arrested, I thought I would feel free. Didn't you? For a while. But punishment closes a door. It doesn't repair what happened behind it. I looked toward Sarah's sewing room window. What would Sarah have done? Arthur smiled. She would have invited Thomas to dinner and made him confess before dessert. That sounded like her. The opportunity came 2 weeks later. It was a Sunday evening. I had just finished washing a coffee cup when someone knocked on the front door. Thomas stood outside. He looked older than he had at the bank. No suit, no leather folder, no plan in his hands. Can I come in? I stepped aside. He entered and looked around the hallway. His eyes stopped on the marks near the wall where Sarah had measured his height as a child. We sat in the kitchen. For a while, he said nothing. I did not rescue him from the silence. Finally, he spoke. I told myself I was protecting the business. I waited. Then I told myself I was protecting Natalie and Owen. He rubbed his hands together. After that, it became easy to say, I was protecting you too. Did you believe it sometimes? That is the dangerous part. He nodded. I was angry that you had money and wouldn't offer it. You never asked. I thought asking would make me look like a failure. So you chose to make me look incapable instead. His face tightened. Yes. The word was barely audible, but it was honest. He looked toward the window. I remembered something, Mom said. What? She said you recorded people's words for a living. But you understood them by watching what they did. I smiled faintly. She said many things about my job. She also said you were impossible to lie to. That never stopped either of you from trying. Thomas almost smiled, but the expression disappeared. I'm sorry, Dad. I had imagined that moment many times. In some versions, I forgave him immediately. In others, I told him to leave. Reality was quieter. I believe you are sorry, I said. Is that enough? No, he lowered his head, but it is a beginning. What do I have to do? Stop asking what you have to do to get back what you lost. He looked confused. The trust. You think this is about the trust, isn't it? No. Your position in the trust may never be restored. His face showed pain, but he did not argue. That is a consequence, I continued. It is not a punishment I am waiting to remove, once you behave well. Then what does rebuilding mean? It means calling me when you do not need money. It means allowing Owen to love me without using him to carry messages. It means telling Rachel the truth without blaming Natalie. It means attending counseling, even if your marriage ends. And it means understanding that I may forgive you before I trust you. Thomas sat quietly, then he nodded. I can do that. I hope so. He stayed for dinner. Nothing dramatic happened. I heated soup. He sliced bread. We talked about Owen's school project and the repair work on the Aurora development. When he left, he hugged me at the door. The hug felt uncertain. That was appropriate. Trust should feel uncertain when it has been broken. Certainty comes later, if it comes at all. That night, I went into my office and opened Sarah's trust file. For a moment, I considered changing the amendment. I did not. Love did not require me to forget what Thomas had done. Forgiveness did not require me to hand back the weapon he had misused. I returned the document to the folder and locked the drawer. Then I sat beside Sarah's photograph. You were right, I said. She had once told me that children did not stop needing parents when they became adults. The job simply changed. When they were young, we protected them from danger. When they grew older, sometimes we had to stop protecting them from consequence. Thomas had believed that being my son gave him the right to control my choices. I had believed that being his father meant I should solve every crisis before it destroyed him. We were both wrong. The cards in my wallet had been restored. My accounts were secure. The house remained in Sarah's trust. Those things mattered, but the real victory was not keeping my money. It was keeping the right to decide what happened to my life. Abjanj had not taken that from me. My son had tried, and I had stopped him, without destroying the small part of our relationship that could still be repaired. I did not remove Thomas from my life because he made one terrible mistake. I removed his power over me, because love without boundaries becomes permission, and silence without action becomes surrender. I had spent 35 years recording what people said in court. But my family taught me the lesson that mattered most. When someone says they are taking away your freedom for your own protection, do not listen only to the kindness in their voice. Look carefully at what they are asking you to sign.